Hey, you guys ready to do this Mandalorian review?
Yeah, almost. I'm just finishing up my notes right now.
Yes.
Cool. Hey, Banner, what did you think about Paz Vizsla in this episode?
Yes.
Is that the only thing you're going to say? All review?
No.
Damn it. Did Banner get back in his IG-12 replica?
Yes. 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 Yes.
Okay, I'm
Yes.
just going to mute him.
No. 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 No.
Welcome in to the Bro 4 Squad podcast, where we are just a bunch of bros drinking beer and watching TV and movies. This is our review of The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 7, called The Spies. It's also Chapter 23 if you're counting that way. I am your host, the Mayor Jeff Hornacek. Like I said, we are here to review this as we do all of our television episodes using the 4 Bro 4 Squad criteria, which is the acting, the story, our favorite scene, and then any theories and questions going forward. This is the penultimate episode. We got the whole crew here, the American hero Nate Thurmond and the mad scientist Brian Banner. And Nate, since penultimate is one of your and mine's favorite words, we'll toss it to you first for the acting and cast in this episode. What'd you think?
I mean, most of the people who are staples in this show already really brought it. Mando was great. Bo-Katan was great. Paz Vizsla was great in this as well. But have to shout out and kind of put a highlight on Giancarlo Esposito since he got reintroduced. Since we hadn't seen him, I mean, really all season. We saw him at the end of last season. So, I mean,
I forgot about that.
He's just a phenomenal actor. Love this casting for him that they brought him into the Star Wars universe. Opening up. Like the opening scene, it's great seeing the hologram conversation he has, and that's like the first time we see him. But like just super Darth Vader vibes. It's awesome. Like even like the voice inflections on some of the things he does through the hologram. It really kind of brought me back to some older Star Wars installations. And yeah, he's just like the perfect villain in this role. So it was great seeing him come back in this and really having a huge part in this episode. It was awesome.
And anytime we get anything Imperial centric, I'm typically down for it. And I guess we get into this a little bit in story, but I was glad that we knew it was coming eventually, at least we were hoping, but now we sort of got the tie into that episode that felt like a bit of an outlier earlier with Alaya, Kane, and Dr. Pershing. That kind of makes sense now, which is another huge benefit to bringing in Moff Gideon in this one. So Banner, what did you think? I know as a fan of Rebels and Clone Wars, there was a lot here in terms of characters, or at least like allusions to them, specifically in that opening scene, although there was an actor that I wanted to see, you probably did too, that we only got mentioned of. But what did the acting and cast do for you in this episode?
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys said. Everybody brought their A game. All the staples, Katie Sackhoff, I don't even know who's playing Din Djarin anymore. Is it still Pedro Pascal technically? Or
I think so. I don't know if he's in costume the whole time, but like he's emoting and he's doing all the voice stuff.
Yeah.
And I got Katie Sackhoff. I did not know she had this kind of acting chops for live action roles. She has been given a lot of weight to carry in this, and she could have been overexposed, but she has carried her own. I've been very impressed with how well she's done.
I think that, like I said, everybody has done great. This, I don't know if this is more character driven, so I don't know if it's going to be should be in story or should be here, but Ace Wolf needs to stop fighting people because he keeps losing.
I just kind of appreciate that he's not going to leave the bat on his shoulder. He's at least going to take.
I respect it, but like, dude, eventually they're not going to let you yield.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's the problem. He's the kid that has like been allowed to like call timeout his whole life when he gets in a fight. And eventually someone's going to be like, I don't fucking play by those rules. I'm going to kill you. Sorry.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I got. Love that we saw they kind of came full circle with the Boba Frick people, which was kind of cool to see.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get into a little bit more of how that relates to everything else. But again, everybody brought their A game. Carlos Esposito, dude, whatever you're doing, keep doing it.
Yeah. One quick shout out I want to give. So Brian Gleason, who plays Brendel Hux in this, which is, I did a little internet research afterwards, General Hux's father, who is not a good father based on what we see of him in the Star Wars comics, which are canon. But Brian Gleason, if you're watching it, because this is what I was thinking, I was like, oh, they did a good job casting a guy who looks like Dom Hall Gleason, who played General Hux. Well, that's because they're brothers in real life.
Makes sense. Checks
Two
out.
Actors. Yeah.
That's funny.
Nice.
So that was a cool bit of casting. I don't know if I guess it would have to be. I don't even know how old he would be in Rebels, but is Brendel Hux in? Have you seen him in anything before? I know he's in the comics, but I don't know if age-wise, if it makes sense for him to be in anything else. I'm having trouble with the timeline sometimes.
The name's not coming to mind for me, but I'm also an idiot, so.
Yeah, same. It's not ringing a bell.
Okay. So I guess it was just kind of like a cool nod to how Hux gets involved in the First Order because his dad was. Which, again, I think that's kind of the cool part about this is now we can actually see, and it will help the sequel trilogy if we can see some of how the First Order formed after that power vacuum was created when the Empire fell. Because to me, that shit is really, really interesting. All these resources, all these worlds that, the New Republic is trying to take over and protect and rule, and all these people that have a lot of really bad ideas, one of them being Thrawn, who gets mentioned here, and just a whole universe really up for grabs is a really, really fun time to tell Star Wars stories, I think.
Yeah. And not to get like down a rabbit hole, and I think I mentioned this before, like I don't know like how much of this was like pre-thought, like George Lucas back in like the 70s and 80s, like, hey, I know he had like the prequels planned out that started in 99 quite a bit in advance, but like did he plan out and be like, hey, let's do this and this and this, we're gonna have these gaps so it'll create a whole universe we can fill in later down the road and have this whole saga that we continue for 40-50 years.
Yeah, that's a great question.
There's no way. I think he got very fucking lucky.
Oh, it could be. I don't know how.
I think Dave Filoni saw the opportunity of, oh, hey, you made these gaps, I'll fill them in.
100% could be that.
But past that, let's not give George Lucas any more than he deserves.
Well,
Okay.
it is kind of interesting. Last thing I'll say before we move on to story is when the sequel trilogy came out, I think a lot of people, including myself, didn't really ask too many questions. We were like, that's weird. These guys look and act exactly like the Empire, who we just defeated, and now we're just like fighting them again. So to go over like how basically history repeats itself and how this happens could not only save some of the sequel trilogy, but just be, again, a really interesting story to tell. Like what causes, because the New Republic we've already seen has kind of started to fuck up. Like, after they defeated the Empire, like they're either getting overconfident or just don't know what they're doing. So
they're leaving before they walk.
Right, they're leaving the door open. They're like the Atlanta Falcons when they blew that lead to the Patriots. Like you got to put a team away, All right, story. The plot synopsis, according to IMDb, is embarrassingly brief. It says, "Survivors come out of hiding," which like could be anything. So I summarized it with there's really like two main plot points. I guess maybe one main plot point that only comes back up at the end of the episode. But we have Alaya Kane revealed in sort of like a Blade Runner esque scene on Coruscant to have been working for Moff Gideon the entire time, sort of helping keep tabs on Pershing. And then, of course, we have the Mandalorians leave Nevarro and go to reclaim Mandalore. And they realize that Gideon's team has been there the entire time mining Beskar. So Banner, the story, I think you were a big fan of this one from what I saw in the text, but the momentum that we lost last week with the Lizzo and Jack Black episode, did we regain it here?
I think so. You hit on a little bit, but this Shadow Council that we've got, you can see this is the early stages of the First Order, which again is cool to see, especially with this disappointing, I think, is the general opinion is that the First Order is like, oh, so it's just the Empire, you just used them again. Well, now we're seeing how they got there. And I think that's very important for the Star Wars universe as a whole, not only this show. This episode really, I know there's a lot of action, especially at the end, but this was the calm before the storm. You could feel everything going. You can feel everything starting to build. You can feel like this is coming to an end very soon, but I don't quite know how. And everything that they did here just made me so much more mad about last week's just absolute atrocity of an episode. I stand by my statement. Worst thing that has ever happened in the Star Wars universe was last episode. But
That's
I don't want to say they redeem themselves, because there is no excuse that will make last week okay in my mind. But they righted the ship for sure.
What do you think, Nate?
Yeah, this was a really great episode, top to bottom. Trying to think back. First or second favorite episode of this season, probably, for me. But yeah, it's really cool starting out. I know that there's been some mention already on here about the mention of Grand Admiral Thrawn, and I think it's just great timing, and it gives a lot of credit to the people running Star Wars now these days and creating this content. Just the way they're dropping these in these episodes, and it's so seamless because they put this in here right after the Ahsoka trailer dropped like a week or two ago.
Great planning there. Yeah.
Great planning on their side. So like we're getting excited because we saw the back of his head in the live action Ahsoka trailer. So then they mention it and they just kind of like tease you a little bit more and tickle your balls a little bit. I'm like, I love it. Keep it coming. But yeah, this is awesome. Seeing like the councils being formed, seeing how the First Order is rising. And yeah, what a bounce back episode from last week. That big pile of dog shit. Unfortunately, wasn't on the review to shit on it with you guys, but
we read your thoughts.
Don't worry.
Thank you.
You were well represented.
But yeah, I mean, just fantastic. You get the cohesion of the two Mandalorian groups. You even get the introduction of IMDb's plot synopsis. The survivors come out of hiding or whatever they said. So you get kind of a deeper dive into Mandalore, which is obviously being a huge plot point for this season. So we're finding out that, hey, there were actually some Mandalorians on the planet that survived and then been kind of traveling around. So you get that connection for the ragtag group of Mandalorians coming in, and they can kind of introduce a third group, which I think kind of helps cohese all of them together. And then just one of the most badass ending scenes of the whole series so far in all three seasons.
Yeah, I was critical of Ludwig van Göransson, who I'm fine being critical of because I've been, aside from Banner, maybe like his biggest supporter for the past 4 or 5 years. I was critical of him with the Paz Vizsla lack of score during that Mandalorian siege a few episodes ago. Yeah. And he clearly, because this is how time works, clearly heard my criticism, went back retroactively and redid the score for this episode because it was fucking incredible.
He had time to take care of it in post. Yeah.
Yeah. One thing I do want to say, just because you guys pretty much covered all my thoughts for story and plot and how badass it was, that third group of Mandalorians on Mandalore, I loved. I was getting like Mad Max in the Star Wars universe vibes from them. A
little bit of Waterworld.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. Like with the costume design and everything like that. And then dude, the budget for Mandalorian, the way that they use it on CGI, especially this season, has just blown me away. Because that scene with the monster, like that was, it's Star Wars, so I guess we can't be too surprised by it, but it's still television at the end of the day. That was like high-end blockbuster movie CGI. And I know it wasn't like on screen a lot, but it looked incredible. And the whole aesthetic on Mandalore, the way it was lit, and then going underground, it was just like an incredible episode. And I know last week, every show kind of feels like they have one episode where you're like, yeah, that was like, did we need that episode? But the thing that I think frustrated me about last week's episode is it wasn't like story-wise, we had to like take a breath and have a filler episode. There could have been a great story with Bo-Katan reuniting with her old clan. It was just like the way they did it, they turned it like, it was just a horrible plot device for how they got her to, I can't remember the guy's name you just referenced earlier, Banner keeps getting his ass kicked.
Ace Wolf.
Yeah, how they got her back to Ace and the other Mandalorians was just, I didn't like the plot device, but I think they've almost righted all their wrongs with this episode.
Yeah, they could have done so much better last episode. And they could have made the whole episode about them trying to rejoin and then trying to rekindle. And it could have come to the same ultimate climax of them fighting. but them trying to get together
Absolutely.
and them trying to work through the differences and then just saying, fuck it, no, we have to fight for this. And you could have had the same last 5 minutes, which was the best part of the episode, but you could have put something in there other than, hey, we have this task for you to do before you can talk to the Mandalorians. Like,
Right.
that's so corny and cheeky.
It was very video game like, where it's like, before you can enter the fire temple, you need
Yeah.
to find the fire tunic. And it's like, okay, I'm fine with that, but if I have to find the fire tunic by like playing some stupid game as opposed to a cool quest, that's where I get upset.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the CGI and pointed that out, because I fully recognize that, especially whenever the monster came out and it broke the ship apart. It was such a badass, like 2 or 3 seconds, specifically whenever that thing broke apart and you see all the Mandalorians scatter almost like fireflies, and you see their jetpacks lighting
Love
up and all that.
part. That was
It
an
was
honorable
so
mention
cool.
for best scene for me.
Yeah, it was a cool moment.
Just they're scattering like a bees when you hit their hive with a baseball bat. It was very, very well done.
It was so well done.
Have you done that? Hit a beehive with a
Plead the
baseball?
fifth.
I hope to God that was a dare. All right,
Yeah, totally.
moving on to best scene. I mean, there's some really great ones, especially like the second to third act of this episode. But I have to say, the campfire / like meeting scenes between the Mandalorians this season, there's probably been 2 or 3 of them, have all really, really hit me hard in the feels, and I think have just been really cool. So the scene that I'm going to go with first was the I will go scene, essentially, where the Mandalorians were at the campfire and Bo-Katan was like, I need a group to go back to Mandalore, and it really only works if we have people from all the different factions that have reunited for the Mandalorians as a show of unity. So it'd be awesome if somebody could fucking raise their hand so I don't have to draw people out of the hat to go do this. And it looks like no one's going to do it, or at least only Din and her are going to go. And then Ace and his crew volunteer, and then Paz Vizsla is like, well, if people are going to be fighting, I mean, I might as well throw my hat into the ring as well. I thought that was a really cool scene, and then really sets up, even though there's still a lot of tension between these two groups, at the end of the day, they see the light at the end of the tunnel to reclaim Mandalore, and to them it's enough to put aside their differences to sort of unite for a common goal. I thought that was really, really cool, and as sort of like the through line of this season, even though it's kind of been a little bit suspect at certain times in certain episodes in terms of how devoted the storyline has been to it, that was a really cool way for me to be like, all right, that's what season 3 of The Mandalorian is about. All the different sects of the Mandalorians scattered throughout the universe reuniting for this common goal to rebuild their homeworld. What you guys think?
Yeah, that was my scene as well. Just Bo-Katan asking for volunteers, and the tension of, oh, nobody's going to follow her regardless of their culture, her wielding the dark saber and the rightful quote unquote ruler of Mandalore. But everybody just saying, you know what, a friend of my enemy, or an enemy of my enemy, is my friend, and we have to get behind that, and everybody kind of come together. It was a great scene. You could see, okay, this is setting up what the last 4 acts of the show is going to be, being the third act of this episode and the entirety of the season finale. It won't work without that scene.
For sure. I did kind of get the sense, too, when no one is volunteering and then Ace volunteers, Paz Vizsla's like, all right, I'm not going to fucking let this guy be the MVP who, like, brings it. So, no, I'm going to. Like, don't think, even if I'm just going to lead block for you, like, if you score the touchdown, I'll be the guy that cleared the way in front of you. And then, of course, the way the episode ends, I mean, it's a phenomenal scene with him. So he definitely earned his keep. Yep. Nate, what was your favorite scene?
Well, as impactful as your guys' scene was that you brought up, thank you for leaving me the low-hanging fruit at the end, because that was mine. And I mean, Paz Vizsla just taking one for the team and being the most badass Mandalorian out there and taking on. He's like, I've got to do this for the greater good.
Willing to sacrifice bunt, really, like give up his at bat. So everyone else can swing away.
We need the squeeze. We need the squeeze play on.
And the fact that you know that he has a child and is so just cares for that child so much. The fact that he let all of that go and sacrificed all of that for everybody just made it that much more meaningful and sad, and a warrior's death. I mean, everything, all of the above.
Nate, you can open that.
Yeah,
the
go for it.
the visual and like the way it like with his machine laser gun like overheating, but he's basically like, I don't give a fuck, my finger's not coming off this trigger. That was just so cool. The visual of that gave me like, they're totally unrelated, but like in the Phantom Menace, you remember when Qui-Gon is like melting the blast doors with his lightsaber? That's what it looked like as it was overheating, and he's just like, I'm just gonna keep shooting this gun until either it shuts down or I die, whatever happens first. I just thought that was so cool.
Yeah, sorry, I was distracted by some outside forces. Apparently, a shut door doesn't mean anything these days. But anyways, yes, that's another great testament to the CGI on this. Like, I was so focused on his gun overheating. I was like, that is like such great detail.
I know.
And like, you can tell it's like ramping up, like it starts glowing a little bit and then just like fucking red hot at the end. And Banner, what you were saying a second ago, it just adds even more emotion and sentiment to that scene, because, you know, he has a son that he cares about, that they had to go on a mission to save. But he's doing this for the greater good of the Mandalorians, for his son. So even outside of the physicality of that scene and how awesome that was and how much of a huge sacrifice that was, yeah, it means so much more because of why he's doing it and what's behind it. And it was just a great way of someone who's kind of butted heads with Din coming in.
And him and Ace
Axe.
fought like hours ago on the boat too.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, Axe fighting. So he's someone who's butted heads, but then he finally has that cool character arc coming full circle and saying, okay, we're all in this together. We have a greater good. We're all on Mandalore now. We see what our home was, and we love it, and we want it back. So it was a great culmination at the end of physicality, emotion, and all kinds of things.
And also him kind of realizing, like, look, I'm the only one who can probably beat the shit out of like 10 of these dark troopers on my own.
Yeah.
So you guys go and I'll handle this.
Yeah, fantastic.
This is, again, a little segue into questions and theories. But do we care about the scene before that when Din got captured? I honestly, he's captured. I'm like, oh, that sucks. But like, that is barely a blip on my radar. Obviously, it's going to have big implications for the season finale. We know that. But
Yeah,
like, the way that it all went down, the fact that Din got captured was kind of small beans, in my opinion.
Yeah, they kind of captured him and they like take him to the interrogation room, and that was kind of it. There wasn't too much more in depth that they went into on that one. So it was kind of thrown by the wayside almost.
Okay, so that, I guess, can we just go right into theories and questions?
Yeah.
'Cause I have a question tying into that before we really get into it. So Moff Gideon in the beginning, it seems like his biggest worry, or the what he perceives right now to be at least the most organized and viable threat to the Shadow Council's plans, is the Mandalorians. So are we to take his, I guess, plan or his motive in going to Mandalore, getting all the beskar, which I actually have a question about that I want to talk about at the very end, and basically doing all this whole siege, capturing Din, is all of this just him trying to be proactive and stop them before they can get in the way of the Shadow Council, or does he want something else with either Mandalore or specifically Din Djarin? Like, is he just basically like, you're the biggest threat to us, I'm going to take you out, or does he have other plans or motivations?
I think it's just what it is at face value. He's seeing them joining back up. He was obviously shocked at the very beginning that these two factions of Mandalorians that were sworn enemies, as he said, are joining up. He's like, well, fuck. If they're actually joining up, like different little sects of them, I'm not worried about it. They're not powerful enough to overtake me. But if they get 2, 3, 4, 5 of them together, it's going to be an issue. So yeah, I think he's really just trying to stop him. I don't know if there's any ulterior motive other than that. But yeah, it just seems like he wants to kind of squash this bug before it gets too big.
And obviously the beskar is valuable. It's kind of like the vibranium of the Star Wars universe. So I guess just in terms of building like an elite fighting force, that would be another interest he would have in the planet of Mandalore.
Mm-hmm. Staying on Moff Gideon. I don't know if I just missed this in the episode or it was touched on at all. Because we talked about this 2 episodes ago. Who actually got him out? Who?
So that was my other question. So the beskar at first, and Brian, please interject if I'm missing something here. We were originally led to believe that because there was beskar on the ship, that a group of Mandalorians were behind freeing him. Yep. But I'm assuming now that we know that he has access to beskar, that it was Alaya, Kane, and just some of his dark troopers that rescued him using that metal, right?
I think so. I think it was his people because we know he's been harvesting and creating beskar for honestly who knows how long now, right?
Yeah. So it was just a
and
bit of a
s-
red herring when we saw the beskar on the ship,
Yeah.
right? For a brief moment.
Yeah. We knew that it
Yeah.
was used, and we just assumed that the Mandalorians were the only people that have access to it. Obviously, we were wrong.
I gotta be honest,
Gideon's like, nah, I'm swimming in this shit.
it was a fun few episodes of being super fucking paranoid. Like every Mandalorian that popped up, I was like, "You sack of shit! You're probably the one who freed Moff Gideon, didn't you?"
Yeah.
Like what? No, nothing to that.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see like if there's any background on how he got the beskar. One thing I actually do have an issue with, if this is what they're still called, I think his like troopers are still called dark troopers. Now they're in
That
like,
was my last question.
Don't
they're
agree
in like
with that.
they're in like white armor now. I don't like it if they're called dark troopers. I know like dark is like evil, but
And this, my
Initially.
question about them, and this may be answered like either in Ahsoka or in the finale, although I doubt in the finale, is like, why aren't those guys a part of the First Order? Like, I understand Beskar is not that easy to find, but the jetpacks and like all the shit they can do, it's like, dude, any group of them would be your group that you actually want to be like fighting your key battles.
Yeah,
and
that's your A team right there.
exactly. And we haven't seen them until now, but also I guess you could do that with every time Star Wars wants to introduce something new that's cool. If it's like, because they tell stories out of order, you can be like, well, where was that in this movie? Like, dude, we didn't. If I'm being honest, we hadn't been invented yet, so shut the fuck up. We thought of a cool idea, we wanted to put it in Star Wars. Like, do you not
You either
want
buy
cool
it or
shit?
you don't. Get off your high horse.
Right. If you don't want us to make new cool shit, then fine, we'll stop. But I don't think that's what you want. So
No.
that's actually all I had. If you guys had anything else,
Banner.
Okay, so one, we know that Thrawn was obviously mentioned here, and days or less than a week before we saw the back of his head in the Ahsoka trailer. Do you guys think we're going to see Thrawn this coming Wednesday?
Yes.
Yeah.
That was I threw it to you because that was
Yeah.
my last thing. But I think I talked about this on a couple reviews ago, but they had such a big swing for the fences and it paid off with Luke at the end of season 2. I feel like they're going to try and roll the dice. They're going to try and do it
Dude.
again. They're going to try and one up themselves, which for the overall Star Wars fandom, I think Luke is kind of the highest one. But like such like a dark horse, Admiral Thrawn from Rebels, like so many people have been jonesing to get him, and now that you leaked him or you kind of teased him in the Ahsoka trailer, I think they are going to try and sneak him in here. It just makes sense now, and this would be a huge one. This would be a great way to cap off the season.
Yeah, get your fucking popcorn ready. I'm going to make some really bold claims right now. So, Mandalorian is essentially ending with this episode because the movie is what they're going to tie everything up with. Like, this is, I think, the last season of the show. It's basically been confirmed. I think a couple things are going to happen next Wednesday. This is going to be like half of it is going to be like a backdoor pilot for Ahsoka. So I would be absolutely shocked if Thrawn doesn't show up.
I'd be shocked if Ahsoka doesn't show up.
I think Ahsoka's going to show up as well, and I think we're getting a de-aged Harrison Ford as Han Solo.
Ooh.
In some capacity. Whether he shows up in the Falcon to rescue someone at the end, or whether he gets called on like as the New Republic like needs a pilot for something. So I think we're getting all three of those things. And I mean, they have a penchant for swinging big in the finales, and considering this is the last quote unquote finale they're going to have for this show, I think Filoni and Favreau are really going to put their nuts on the table and be like, watch this, bro.
Yeah,
I
Go ahead,
agree
Banner.
with all of that. I think that when Thrawn shows up, I think there's an outside chance that he kills Moff Gideon. Moff Gideon obviously was talking
definitely
shit
see that.
on him. Like, hey, that's great. You keep talking about him, but where the fuck is he? I'm here. I'm actually doing shit.
Right.
You know? And he is going to get word of that and just say, you know what? You're right. Bye.
Talk shit,
And
get
kill
hit.
Moff Gideon. We've got this guy that we've built him up. I think he's a great villain, Moff Gideon.
Well, that would do a great job of setting up Thrawn too as like the big bad for Ahsoka. Like,
Exactly.
wow, that's the guy that fucking offed Moff Gideon, who Mando was fighting for 3 seasons. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you guys saw. I think Filoni and Favreau had some non-spoiler quotes that were going around the internet this last week for the season finale. And I know Filoni said the fans have a lot to take in this last episode. So
Oh shit.
God, I don't even.
Do we
I don't even
have-
want to try and dissect that?
I'll check.
yeah,
Do we have a runtime yet?
it's a great question. I haven't looked.
I
it up.
haven't seen anything, but I also haven't looked for anything. I've got one more thing that I kind of wanted to just where's N1? Why didn't we get any more N1 in this episode?
What's N1?
Naboo, his Naboo fighter, isn't that what it's called?
Oh,
I didn't know that.
yeah. Actually, now that you mentioned that, it's kind of funny. No, I guess yeah. In any like the flying scenes, they like go to Mandalore and they have like a fleet. I guess I don't know. It's a smaller ship, so that he just jumped on one of the bigger ones. I guess.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it wasn't a situation where it was like we just got the Uber XL. We didn't really need him to drive his own.
It wasn't necessary. Like in the dogfight scenes that they've had in some of the episodes, it's great seeing that. But like they're traveling across the universe, going to different planets. I don't think they needed it as much.
Sure.
Yeah, Banner, the MPGs that the Naboo fighter gets, we both know it's just not economical.
Sure,
for this.
You're right. I just thought of another thing too. Are we going to get Grogu basically playing Mortal Kombat in his little IG unit in this last episode? Because he was really just kind of there in this episode, but they obviously made a big deal about putting him in that robot.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, when they referenced or showed IG-11 in the beginning of the season, I think we all thought like, well, it really didn't feel like something that was just injected in the story for no reason. Like it felt like, okay, this is going to play a role in some fashion later on. I just don't really. It's definitely not what they originally intended to use it for. Like, I think Nate had referenced how he wanted him as a navigator on the planet, and now it's just like a vehicle for Grogu to ride in.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't really know. I don't know if it's just like a cool callback to get Grogu in like something that makes it more feasible for him to like contribute to the fight, or if they just thought it was funny to do the gag of yes, no.
It's not funny.
Crap. Oh yeah, I was kind of confused whenever they first introduced, I guess, IG-12 now, saying that they stripped him down to basically his basic parts, and someone has to be in there to control him. Like, okay, but how does that help Din? Because his whole thing was he wanted him for navigation. Like, does he still have that? Did they strip that out? That really wasn't touched on. I was kind of confused if he can even be used for the purpose that he wanted him for in the first place.
At this point, it feels very out of place. I have faith that they'll bring it in somehow, but right now it is definitely very out of place with how everything else was going.
As we keep talking, things keep popping in my head. This will probably be the last thing, but I was thinking about this earlier on a rewatch. Where is Moff Gideon at the beginning of the episode? Because you see him do the hologram. He starts walking back. He walks through his dark troopers. He walks through some familiar tanks we've seen with some possible clones in them. Is he on Nevarro, or did they move the base? Because that's where we first saw those 2 seasons ago.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
I just assumed that he was at the end of the episode. At the beginning, I had no idea. I just assumed at the end of the episode he was on Mandalore in like a secret underground base.
Did we see any of those?
What do you mean at the end? What do you mean at the end? Like when he's fighting?
Because we obviously he's on Mandalore at the end of the episode, right?
Yeah.
So 100%.
I
just assumed that his base is also on Mandalore. And
since he was on Mandalore at the end, you just assumed the first part was in Mandalore.
Correct.
I thought he was like on a ship in the first one, but I don't know. Did we see any of those cloning chambers on Mandalore?
No, I don't think he's either somewhere else. I mean, I guess he could be on Mandalore and he's just taking that as a home base since no one really lives there, or he could be on a ship. I just didn't know if that was answered or anything.
He's really making himself at home there. Like he took his shoes off, he's kicked his feet up, he even got himself a beer out of the fridge. It's a bit much.
Just help himself, jeez.
You know, ate a string cheese.
I was saving that.
Well, it's gone now. Figure it out.
Yeah, that's all I got now. Empty my tank.
Banner, you got anything else?
No. I'm excited for this last episode. This has definitely been a high highs, low lows season. But I think we're trending upwards here. So I've got high hopes here. High hopes.
I think the low lows of the last episode, to me, it just felt so unlike this show. I think is why I didn't like it. It was like a desperate attempt for a show that like wants to reel in an audience, and that is so beneath The Mandalorian and the quality of what we've come to expect from it that I think that's why I was surprised and just kind of like, dude, you guys don't have to do this. Like, come on. But they righted the ship here, and I'm expecting a wild finale. Like, I can't wait for next week's review. I think it's going to be awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, it's going to top everything, I'm sure.
Yeah, it'll be Mando season 3 finale review / predictions for Ahsoka season 1.
Yeah, they're gonna
boners.
They're gonna have a ton of tie-ins for sure.
Yeah, trying to avoid spoilers for that online because next week is kind of a weird week for us, at least Nate and I. Hopefully we can find time to review where I haven't had it spoiled for me online. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed, yeah.
All right, for the mad scientist Brian Banner, the American hero Nate Thurman, I'm the mayor Jeff Hornacek, we are the Bro Force Squad podcast. Thank you guys so much for checking us out. One more episode, maybe of all time, of The Mandalorian. Please join us next week for that review. In the meantime, subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, anywhere you find podcasts. If you type in Bro Force Squad as 3 separate words. We're also on Letterboxd. Type in those same 3 words. We're on Twitter at Bro4Squad, and everything we've ever posted is on our website, bro4squad.com. Till next time, I have to go fire this laser machine gun and protect Nate and Brian.
Yes.
Thank you for your sacrifice.
Yes.